Right, normally I give you this wonderful introduction to relative clauses, but I can't do that today. So it's grammar time, relative clauses. And again, no music. Probably the best thing because there's copyright infringements to think about. Let's look at this sentence.
My brother is a doctor. He lives in New York.
We've got two pieces of information. My brother is a doctor and my brother lives in New York.
My brother, who lives in New York, is a doctor.
We can put both of those pieces together in one sentence, and the thing between the commas is a relative clause. It's got a relative pronoun, my brother who, because my brother is a person, and we call this a non-defining relative clause. It's called non-defining because we can take out the information. It's just extra information that we don't need. We can still say my brother is a doctor, and it doesn't change any meaning, and it makes sense on its own. Look at these two sentences. My sister who lives in Boston is a vet, and my sister who lives in Halifax is a dentist. If we take out the who lives in Boston, who lives in Halifax, we get my sister is a vet and my sister is a dentist. It sounds like I've got one sister who has two jobs. So this is called a defining relative clause. And the reason it's called a defining relative clause is because we need the who lives in Boston to understand which sister we're talking about. Okay, it's like saying my Boston sister and my Halifax sister, but that's just where they live, so that doesn't define them, does it? Look at these two sentences. The students who live in Kempston travel on the number 68 bus. The students who live in Kempston travel on the number 68 bus. There's a slight difference in how I say them. The students, pause where there's a comma, who live in Kempston, pause where there's a comma, travel on the number 68 bus. Now, this means the students travel on the number 68 bus, so we can assume that all of the students travel on the number 68 bus and all of the students live in Kempston. This is a non-defining relative clause. Notice the commas. The students who live in Kempston travel on the number 68 bus in green could be followed by, but the students who live in Brick Hill travel on the number 6 bus. Okay, so the first one meant those students travel on the number 68 bus and they all live in Kempston. The second one, the students who live in Kempston, or the Kempston students, travel on the number 68 bus, and the students who live in Brick Hill travel on the number 6 bus. So the second one with no commas was defining which group of students we're talking about. First one was telling us some extra information about all of the students. Let's look at the relative pronoun who, which, and that. Okay, the students that live in Kempston travel on the number 68 bus. We can use that for the second one. We can't make it a grammatically correct sentence by using it in the first one. So we don't use that when we have commas, so when it's a non-defining relative clause. But when it's a defining one, you can use that. Or you can use who. Okay, my recommendation is use the relative pronoun that you've learned every time. So with people, who. English people will say the students that live in Kempston. For the second one, you don't need to. And we leave out which, who, or that. In a defining relative clause, the one with no commas, we can leave it out when it's an object pronoun. We passed the exam. The exam that we passed was tough. Or we could say the exam we passed was tough. Native English speakers will do this every time. Again, you don't have to, but you have to understand it or you could get confused. My sister who lives in Boston is a vet. We can't leave out the word who here because she's the subject of the sentence. Okay. So, for example, I spoke to the person who I spoke to. I am the subject of the sentence. So you could say the person I spoke to. Okay. But if you say the person who spoke to me, somebody spoke to me, then the person who spoke to me, we can't leave out the who in that sentence because it's the subject. Okay. The person I spoke to, the film I saw, the grammar we are learning rather than the grammar that we are learning. Okay. And again, I won't play much music because we could have copyright infringement issues.